Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Beyond the Bites, a show where we discuss the trending issues of the region. Over 70 years after independence, corporate honchos are yet to extend their empire in the Northeast, and despite all efforts, there seems to be little likelihood that things will change in the immediate future. While India's fast-growing entrepreneurial landscape has given rise to some very promising startups and entrepreneurs elsewhere in the country, it is time for Northeast too to make its presence felt in the arena. What is then lacking in the region? Is it a supportive and enabling environment, or is it that such an environment already exists, but it is a lack of awareness and red tapeism to an extent which is killing the zeal? To find answers to these questions and much more, we have with us today a group of expert panelists. I have with me Mr. Arindam Hazarika, Director of Arohan Foods. Very warm welcome, Arindam. Thanks for being Beyond the Bites today. I also have with me Mr. Achintya Sharma, a mentor to young entrepreneurs and also somebody who has been in the helm of affairs in a number of corporate houses across the country. To my right is Dr. Sriparna Barua, the head of Center for Industrial Extension of the Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship, Guwahati. And I also have with me Mr. Pankaj Gogoi, who is the founder of Startup Assam. A very warm welcome to all of you to this episode of Beyond the Bites. I would like to go straight to Arindam. A very general question, Arindam, to start with. What does it take to be an entrepreneur?
Honestly, being an entrepreneur is a mix of many things. One would be little bit of stupidity to start with, little bit of bravado, little bit of shamelessness, but the biggest thing, the single biggest thing that you would require is self-confidence. So everything together in a pot, you might come out an entrepreneur.
Well, that's a very unique way to put it. Would you agree, Mr. Sharma, that these are times when being an entrepreneur, despite all the hiccups, actually seems exciting?
Yeah, surely. Means it was always been, something that a place like Assam was waiting for ever since the peace came into this area, and people were just waiting, right? So there's so much of positivity, a lot of zeal I see, especially with youngsters. I've been coming, every year and meeting people, different kinds of from different fields of life, and I find that everybody wants to do something significant. And I also see two things. One, apart from the startup thing, they also want to do something for the society. So I feel that there is a genuineness in the way people are approaching the whole entrepreneurial and the startup ventures.
So, Dr. Barua, people ready to do things. Is the region ready for this?
I think at the moment region is also becoming ready. I wouldn't say is ready, but is becoming ready. We have so many initiatives being taken up by the government, by various facilitating bodies. I think it's everyone is getting ready. And the most important thing is, the entrepreneurs, these aspiring entrepreneurs are taking up entrepreneurship as seriously. That's most important. The facilities are already there. It requires, as Arindam has very clearly said, the 4 points: confidence, brave, conviction. These are some of the real important points rather than the region. Then, you create the situation in which the facilitating bodies would automatically start and helping you out.
Pankaj Gogoi, is there enough fodder in the region to motivate somebody to be an aspiring entrepreneur?
There have been a lot of organizations who have been working for the startup and entrepreneurial activities across the region so far. But there is a little bit of push from the government side as to for an incubation center. Perhaps we can have an incubation center which is the need of the hour, which also will create an awareness programs for the different entrepreneurial activities.
Well, Arindam, I'll just come back to here. We have at least a couple of young entrepreneurs here today with us. What is the biggest and the first initial dilemma of a budding entrepreneur?
I'll just come back to the first thing I said.
Absolutely.
Entrepreneur needs to be stupid. Not in his own eyes, but in everybody else's eyes. I'll just share this couple of examples that I sort of think fits today's. Only 90% of all entrepreneurship ventures fail. Probably in the Northeast, the ratio is as high as 95, just 5% pass or become sustainable. When somebody wants to start a venture of his own, that's a very low number to be targeting. And that's why it's okay to be stupid on day one. If you look at something else that rest of India madly follows, your joint entrance examinations, your CAT, the rate of success is 1%. but your parents, your grandparents, your uncle, your nephews, everybody supports you in that. So if you look at the percentage chances of succeeding, it's much better as an entrepreneur. And let everybody think you're stupid, but you can take that first step, and in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years if it requires, prove that it is doable.
That's again a very nice way to put things, Mr. Sharma. Do we have an environment? Do we still have an environment, or are we heading towards that stage where we have an environment where people can actually, even in the region, can think of becoming entrepreneurs? Right now, what is happening is that becoming an entrepreneur is the last option. Well, I mean, that's how our society has been, traditional societies in the Northeast. Trying something out, well, I probably couldn't do anything, so let me try this out. Is there a paradigm shift in that kind of mindset? Do we see that, or is it still very much the same till date?
Yeah, so the way I look at ecosystem or the environment in the context of a startup is largely as a food chain. Okay, so at the very top would be the consumer. Right? The two big carnivores in the food chain is, one is the consumer, the other one is the investor, and at the very bottom, what they're feeding on is an idea. Right, so all the things in between constitutes the food chain. You know, the engineers, the marketing guys, the office, the incubation center, funds, everything is a part of the thing in between.
Absolutely.
Now, for us as an entrepreneur or as a startup ecosystem, this idea that somebody comes up with has to finally reach the consumer, right, and has to make some profitable venture for the investor. Now, all these things cannot get together in one place at one time, all of that. Right? Things will evolve. I'm sure that for a certain idea, already things are in place. For a certain, if you want to do a semiconductor startup here, I'm sure it will take some time. Absolutely. But we don't need to be stuck on that. But if you want to do something like a healthcare startup, or a handloom startup, or something like the food agri startup, I'm sure many things are in place. So it can't be something, we can't be waiting for that grand design, the grand moment where everything will fall in place. What is everything, right? So there's nothing called everything in a startup. Of course, your sweat is everything, okay? And more than that, I think there's nothing else, right? You have to put an idea and then put everything behind it. And I'm sure that with the positivism that I see around this place, I think things will fall in place. We have to have some amount of patience. As Rindam said, these are part of being an entrepreneur. Patience has to be there. You can't be an impatient businessman, right? So these are things I believe that the ecosystem and the environment is getting into place for a certain class of businesses. There are certain classes of businesses maybe we will never do. For the next 200 years, we don't need to get there.
Absolutely. Dr. Barua, how would you define an enabling environment in this?
See, the enabling environment would comprise of a number of things, including, when we talk about the ecosystem, it would comprise of the education system from which we come, the culture from which we come, then the finance, availability of finance, etc. Now, if we look at Northeast, I would like to specifically talk about Assam, about Northeast. We'll find that two important components, particularly your education system and your culture, they are in some way always have been coming in the way of many people opting at entrepreneurship as a career option. Because if you look at, I've been in this entrepreneurship field for more than 20 years now. If I count, earlier what used to happen, who would come and think of entrepreneurship as a career? People who are average in studies, who had no other option, they would keep on thinking, can we do a course? If I don't get a job, possibly I'll look at entrepreneurship as a career. Now, this trend is changing now. This is, last 6-7 years, it's been changing, and it's actually massively.
Would you second that, Mr. Gogoi?
Yeah.
Would you second that?
Yeah,
or has it been are most of us here accidental entrepreneurs than by choice? Or is that changing? Say, for instance, when you embarked on that path, was it by accident or was it by choice? I mean, I'm getting a bit personal here, but you can, of course, share that if you want to. Of
course, an entrepreneurial activity is always by choice because some entrepreneurial enthusiasm comes from within. So if you are to be a great entrepreneur, it has to come from within. It cannot be an environment-centric. But of course, the environment can help you gather much of the activities that you need to do, but the inner self is most important to carry forward. And from the education side, if the teachers starts on entrepreneurial activities from the beginning of their career, or maybe teach them how to dream bigger, they can look forward for bigger dreams.
Yeah,
I
but-
I just want
can I
to
just,
point out
yeah,
something on
yeah,
this.
sure,
Go ahead.
Is about what is the difference between doing a startup and the good old doing a business, right?
Yes.
People have been doing this business thing for many years. Like if you start up a shop, if a tea shop, is it a startup? Okay, or if you do have a plywood factory, is it a startup? People were doing that in the Northeast for a long time. But I think what the difference is this, right? What he said is choice, right? If it was my family-run business, I'm
Absolutely.
just continuing
Absolutely.
it. Or if I
Absolutely.
don't have anything else, as she said,
Absolutely.
and I just landed up, okay, or I didn't get a job, and I'm forced to do something, I have to earn my living, and I do something, that we used to never consider as a startup. But now I have everything, okay, yet I have a zeal to do something different and something which may be outside my comfort boundary, okay, that we consider a startup. But I believe that for both of these two things, I think the essentials are the same. Right? You still, to make it successful, you still need all those things in place. So I think the difference between the good old doing a business and doing a startup, that difference is blurring. And more we go into this more professional way of looking into businesses, that will help us to scale, maybe make global enterprises, all of that, right? So the word startup is sometimes understood in a more romantic way than the old way of understanding that it should be good, profitable business.
Is
And
it-
I
is it-
think
is it- yeah.
the other thing is, there's a misconception about, as he's very correctly said, what a startup is. Because since 2016, Government of India took out an initiative to call it a startup policy, but where they're emphasizing more on innovation and technology led. But so there possibly a subtle difference. But basically, an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur, irrespective of what he does, and the basic qualities remain the same. And the igniting factors of a person to start being an entrepreneur starts from some inspiration, something that he hears somewhere, which I would again like to repeat, where, our culture has always not been, that enthusiastic, or, our culture has been a very comfortable culture in Assam, Northeast, where you don't have to struggle much. And we don't have the background of people where, Assamese, or for the entire Northeast, they don't belong to a family background. So even if a child or a student wants to take up business, I've come across many people like that, the parents would be the most discouraging. They would be discouraging them like anything. I can cite an example of a boy who was working with me. He was from Mirza. He was working with me on contract, and he was economics first class. He was looking for a job. So I kept asking him, why don't you start your business? What do you have at home? He says, I've got land, I've got this. He says, I'm very enthusiastic. I want to start my business. But thing is that my father will never allow me. He's ready to, even if I try for APSC, whatever, but he will not allow me. So that culture, supported by the education system.
So how do you begin? How do you change that mindset? Where does it all begin, Arindam?
I'll just go to the end of your question, and like Achintada said, is that the lines are now blurring. So you start off, for me personally, if you want to be an entrepreneur within quotes, you need to have a business model which is not in that geography per se. So opening a chai shop or a pan shop in Fancy Bazaar is not an entrepreneur, but if you're able to do it in Paris, overnight you become a celebrated entrepreneur. So that's probably one of the ways to do it. Chayos, for example, as a multi-round fund-raised entrepreneur, but essentially end of the day they are a tea shop. For the entrepreneur to succeed in long term, he has to become a businessman. He cannot have the high risk innovation-led strategy for the 10 years and be called an entrepreneur entire life. So when you start off, probably all the ecosystem, then when you talk about the ecosystem, that's when it comes in handy. When you're starting off and the risk of failure is high, that's where you need the ecosystem. With the existing business model, a pan shop and a chai shop in Fancy Bazaar, chances of failure is less. A pan shop in Paris might fail in 2 days. I mean, they might pass a legislation and shut it off. So that's where the ecosystem will help. When we started off around 5 years ago, we probably were the first to get organized venture capital funding in the region, also probably the first to get FDI into agri in the region.
Arohan Foods, you're talking about Arohan Foods, yes.
Me and my co-founders. Even to speak to the prospective investors, we had to go down to Chennai, Mumbai, Bangalore. Now, every second week there's an investor coming to Guwahati. He's actually scouting. There are lots of people coming to us, teams from World Bank coming, ADB coming, and they actually want to build a pipeline for this region. So that's a sea change. In 5 years, where you wanted to meet an entrepreneur, you send him mails for 5 days and you spend your own money and go to Chennai. Now people are coming down and holding conclaves in Guwahati. Huge change. So just that itself should encourage a lot of people.
I think so. You're very correct on that.
Things are indeed changing. That's a very positive development. Does the credit go to just individual entrepreneurs, or we have to give the government of the day also a credit for these changes, of course, because it's the government which forms the policies after all, ease of doing business.
Personally, the intent is there on the part of the government. They've shown good intent. In terms of execution, it is the same, if you can again call it that, complaint that people or entrepreneurs would have is that the intent is right. Execution again gets outsourced to people from Bangalore and Mumbai and Chennai. Right. I mean, there are institutions here, without taking names, who would do all these things. In fact, our first business was the incubation center. We didn't have a food processing line. We probably had the first. It did not work out. Nobody wanted to be incubated at a point of time. But for everything, as long as intent is right, end of the day, we will see results. We may not have the right execution as of now, but it's the right direction.
And I think the environment also is being, it's becoming such that even people who are working professionals, who would always think, I've got a good job, I'll never, quit my job. So that is starting to happen.
Absolutely.
People with 8 years, 10 years experience, they're coming back and they're saying, can I start a business? So that is a very positive trend.
Sorry. Yes. So one thing which I almost want to semi-contradict myself from what I said last time is the difference between just doing a business and doing a startup as in we understand today. And I think that definition is very important. It's, as I said, one is the geography context, but I think in today's times, you have to have some amount of technology and some amount of business innovation in place, regardless of whatever you do, because we are really living in this, what we call as the intelligence revolution, right? And no matter what we do, including your business, his business, everybody's business, unless we put a force multiplier of technology, of business innovation, it's impossible to survive in a real competition. Because somebody doing the same thing, just because powered by better technology, better algorithms, better thing, will take your food away. So I think that's where this whole new definition of startup becomes so much more relevant, because it's no longer just getting an idea, but backing it up with the right kind of processes, right kind of technology, right kind of logistics, the right kind of, all of these things have to be put in place.
Yes.
And that's where the larger ecosystem of startups become so much more meaningful.
Yes, startups for long has been known to be disruptive across the globe, not only just in this country. So, what we take from this round of discussion is that things are heading for a change. Ease of doing business is much better at this point of time. On this note, we'll take a quick break. On the other side, we'll see how service professionals are also looking to become budding entrepreneurs, which is a very positive development. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Beyond the Bites. We're discussing the entrepreneurial landscape of the Northeast. Is it heading towards the right direction? Now, before going to the break, we're discussing how there has been a sea change as far as startups in the region is concerned. Investors now are flocking to the region to put their money into budding businesses, which is a great development. Now, Arindam, I'll just come back to you on this. Just as Dr. Barua mentioned in course of a discussion, that even service holders are now aspiring to go for some entrepreneurship ventures for startups. Is that with the intent of making a change? Is that the sole intent when somebody who is a professional, who is well salaried, well paid, wants to go for a startup? Is that a motivation to go for a change in the society, to do something for the better, not just financial, not just a financial motivation, but to make a change, to make
I can answer this out of personal experience. The three founders of our own foods, we all had jobs with MNCs, Kotak, Tata, Bank of Baroda.
Okay.
So when we decided to leave all of that and start this, making a change was one of the priorities. it would always be an inclusive business where the farmers would make money on day one. That is what we set out as a founding goal. In the process, if we made money, it was always acceptable. We did not want to have, in terms of when we talk about disruptive businesses, there needs to be a business which you need to disrupt. Here at that point of time, it was a blank canvas. We didn't need to be disrupting anything. There were farmers who were not getting access to market. There were people buying products coming in all the way from Sri Lanka. So there was an opportunity, there was a market, and there was need from the farmer side and also from the consumer side. So you had a problem, you had a solution. We are not from the field. So for salaried people or service people, what they have to realize is they have to research and work on a problem good enough, well enough, long enough, so that they can, when somebody questions them, convince them that this is the right way to do it. So none of us are veterinarians, but we actually have agriculture technology as part of our company. Now, we recently won a competition which NRL had held, so they're helping us in developing some of the more cutting edge agri inputs in livestock. So end of the day, what I would like to say is, if you're a service professional, ensure that whatever you're getting into is not because of the fad that sometimes entrepreneurship has become nowadays. You don't want to become an entrepreneur because that's what you want to do, but because entrepreneur or entrepreneurism is the in thing today. So don't let that happen. And if you're good at what you're doing, if you've done enough research, you will make money on the way.
So is being inclusive a great motivating factor for today's entrepreneurs across the country? I mean, we have seen numerous cases where well-salaried people have taken to startups, entrepreneurship. So just what Arindam mentioned, they decided the farmers should make some profit out of it, which is not happening. That is a major motivator today, even in the region.
So for any business or any startup to be, to become a great startup, or to be even make out of move out of the idea stage to become a profitable business, the first thing, of course, your consumer has to benefit, right? Without that, there's nothing else. Unless the value is perceived by the end consumer, right? That is the only thing that matters. The second thing, of course, in a startup is your return to the investor, including the co-founders, right? So where, as much as they make it broad-based, it's so good. And then finally, to the employees themselves. So all these three constituents are stakeholders, and all of them should benefit. You can't keep one out. You can't say that, okay, I'm only being, consumer-centric and I leave out everything else. I don't make money. It will just fall apart. So you have to make money. You have to be profitable. Your consumer should see value, and you should be able to keep your employees motivated and grow the company. So this is a tight balancing act that one has to do.
And I think the message has to go very loud and clear that it is ethics and integrity which are very, very important. Entrepreneurship is not making money by any means. There are no shortcuts to making money. I think that message.
For making money.
You don't
if
make
you're good at it.
Yeah,
You'll definitely
get money. Becomes an outcome of your efforts. So that is something.
But is that widely perceived that you don't get into entrepreneurship to make a lot of money? I mean, of course, there's a part of it.
People who are seriously looking at
You
entrepreneurship.
are someone who interacts with a lot of budding entrepreneurs. And do you see a long-term vision in them, or is it just a shortcut to success that they're looking into as an alternative? On a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay. There are a lot of people who keep coming every day. Some come because they've seen others doing it. So there's a lot of tendency here that someone is doing this, so let me, fall into the trap and start doing it. So you cut into each other's. That's a typical trend which was there. Ultimately, people who sustain are the people who have a vision, who do a lot of hard work, and who have a strong drive to, never give up. I think that's a very, very important quality. People who sustain are the people who never give up. So this is important, and they are people. Ethics is very important. Anywhere you look at it, you look at the corporates, which are the best managed companies. You always look not at how much only the turnover. You're looking at so many other issues.
Absolutely.
So
but
that's very
one
important.
thing I just want to point out here is that when you look at the Silicon Valley kind of startups, or the Israel kind of startups, right, which are the two biggest ecosystems, many entrepreneurs, I wouldn't say most, many of them who are serial entrepreneurs, actually the way we sell products or services, they sell companies. Right?
Yeah.
So they are in the business of creating a startup so that they can exit and make money.
Absolutely.
So which is nothing wrong about it, because many of these entrepreneurs actually are not looking at creating a 100-year-old company.
Absolutely.
They're looking at, I put this much of money, at the end of the fourth year, sixth year, I get 6x, 7x, 13x, whatever the multiple is, and get out, right? Which itself actually is very, very good for the startup system, because it brings in positivism, it shows cases of exits where the investors come in. I believe that even in places like Northeast, the moment you see exits, you will find the number of entrepreneurs flourishing.
Going up.
Flourish.
Because
Yes.
people will see successes.
Yes,
They,
yes.
So far, they have not seen that kind of exits. They haven't seen a, $10 million exit or $100 million exit.
Absolutely.
The moment they see that,
Absolutely.
this house he built with that money, okay, 10 other guys.
The
will
latest,
have
the latest being Amazon
it-
and Flipkart. I
yeah,
mean,
it'll matter,
the latest, and
right?
that is a big motivator.
And that, I think, is a big motivator for startups. You want to see successes of exits.
I'll just add
Yeah.
a couple of things here. While I principally agree to the point, another thing on the ecosystem which is required for entrepreneurs to build multiple companies, multiple startups, is celebrating failure. In Israel and US, you can have 3 successes and your 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th are duds, you're still a success. Here you cannot have a failure. That is where the environment needs to change. If I can break into a little bit of Hindi here, wo second mein to maar khar gaya bhai. So that cannot happen. And the day that stops happening, you will have people who let go of stories, let go of something is built, let somebody else run it, and then start something anew, start something fresh, because otherwise he'll keep running with the whole idea because he'll be scared to fail.
Yes, and
Startup is all about how to fail, and then it's more of a roller coaster.
yes,
ride.
you can share. I mean, you had 2 other startups before you started the Startup Assam.
Yeah.
So of course,
we
you
failed
if
in the
you can
first
just
one in
share with the
2000.
viewers
Yeah.
your experience and how it happened and why you had to close down, and then but you continued. That's a success story. So
eShop Any, we failed down. We were running quite fast enough, faster than Flipkart in Guwahati, but at the same time there was no ecosystem built during that
eShop
time.
Any. So that was a
e-commerce platform.
e-commerce platform.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically we were selling T-shirts and,
Okay.
and Homia Gohanas and
Okay.
stuff like that. But at the same time, the pace at which we were going was way too high and fast. And at the same time, the investor community was not ready for e-commerce.
And that would
investment
be way back in
2012.
2012, of course. Yeah.
So that's where the luck part and right place, right time of being a success
Absolutely.
comes
Right.
in. India
Absolutely.
Plaza, I think, probably was the first to do what Flipkart is doing now.
Right.
India Plaza, most of us haven't heard about.
Right.
Flipkart is not really innovative in the terms of the business model. In terms of process, yes. In terms of recruitment, in terms of marketing, they've done wonders. In terms of the core business, probably not the most innovative company, but a unicorn nonetheless. So
But
exactly
at
what
the same time, if
happened
we
here.
were the ones to get sold to Flipkart,
Yes.
then things would have changed a lot,
Dramatically.
like more people would have invested in.
So what went wrong
companies.
for you back then, and what has changed now? If you can share and compare the experiences.
Yeah, technologies have changed, and it is easier to get developers who can develop e-commerce platforms. People are opting for startups these days. Earlier, people right from the campus, they used to go for the MNC jobs or perhaps find a job in Bangalore. So this has changed a lot. They would rather stay and try to build up a product and then sell it in a bigger market. So that has changed. The perspective of joining a job has changed from students, because a person getting a 15 to 20,000 job right from campus will not sustain him in Bangalore or any of the metros. So why not build a product and then get it bigger and sell the company and get money? So number of times like 10x.
One
or
more thing
6x.
that changes, people no longer laugh at you when you say, "What are you doing? I'm an entrepreneur."
Right.
That's
Actually,
that's a welcome change.
There's one
That's a
big,
welcome
big
change.
shift I see.
Yeah.
Is that earlier, if somebody was trying to do something of a startup kind of in Assam, the psychological market may not be real market. The psychological market was Assam and Northeast. Okay, or take products from Assam and Northeast and somehow showcase in the rest of the world. Right? These were the two models.
Absolutely.
It was never thinking that it's only headquartered in Guwahati. Right, could be a global enterprise or could be a national enterprise. Right, I think that shift has changed. Like he's talking about, I'm only headquartered here. Okay, I can sell in Sri Lanka, Malaysia, wherever I want.
Absolutely.
Right, I think once we have that kind of spirit, that we don't limit ourselves by the 7 states kind of a psychological barrier. Okay, I think we'll blow up. Right? I think that's very very important, because you are constraining your market just like that. Then you're looking at who can buy in GS Road and not thinking of who can buy in the mall somewhere else, right?
I would just like to do a little reality check here. Okay, we are talking about startups the way it's happening rest of India, but let's do a reality check about how many Arindams do we have here
Right.
in
Absolutely.
Assam, right?
We-
In
we-
Northeast,
yeah.
how many Arindams do we who will understand, who will think about being located here, and they say that we are headquartered here. Reality is that people are just We are starting to think that, okay, can we start entrepreneurship as a business? And they have an idea. What is more required is validation of the idea, mentoring in terms of business planning. So we are still at that stage. So which is a very important thing and which is a very positive sign. But then we definitely have possibly the growth will also happen very fast, because this is going to happen. That's why I keep repeating about the education system, which has to change and ignite minds about that. I like to again talk about an experience. Recently I was in IIT Kharagpur, IIT Roorkee, where they were talking about entrepreneurship, and one of the students asked me a very pertinent question. He said that I've come from Bihar, till the time I cracked IIT, this was like my dream. So once I reached and joined IIT, I can easily get a job. But here in the campus, no one is talking about a job. Why is it so? What is entrepreneurship? He got really irritated, Why I've cracked something, got into something, and now everyone is talking about entrepreneurship. So it's this, education system, the atmosphere which is creating that. I think strongly we need to do, create environments like that in various colleges and schools.
Yes. Now, that brings us to, again, a very important point. As you just mentioned, Dr. Barua, how many Arindams, how many Pankaj Gogoi do you find here still? Is it because also partly because our educational institutes in the Northeast have failed? We have an IIM in Shillong, we have an IIT in Guwahati, but how many ideas have actually percolated down to the ground level from these institutes? The same people, they can go out to the mainland, Delhi, Bangalore, and plan their ideas.
But in these IITs and IIMs, how many SMEs, people from Northeast are there? It's a national, it's not necessarily the IIM Shillong is here. They would not be representing people from this region.
Yeah, which is okay. But if there's an IIT in Guwahati, if there's an IIM in Shillong, is it not the duty of the institute to train, teach the students, to get them accustomed, adapt solutions for this region? That is why, in the first place, the institutes are here. Otherwise, we can have all the institutes in Delhi.
You can't say it's a duty, but let's anecdotally, let's look at how other ecosystems have developed. One reason why Bangalore became whatever it is largely because of the educational institutes, right?
Absolutely.
There's Indian Institute of Science, there's IIM Bangalore, and many others, and also the industries and the general environment which brought in people from all over the place. Now, having institutes like IIT, IIIT, IIM does matter, because there should be a diffusion of research, there's a diffusion of just ideas, people from the rest of who are not in those communities. Like, she would go to IIT and have a workshop there, or somebody else, they can go and have some discussion with some product design team there. So I think it helps. The same thing, why Silicon Valley is what it is because of Stanford, right? So each of these institutes, it's not as much as a duty, but I think if we can leverage the relationship between the academia and the rest of the entrepreneurial setup and make it more structured and have something which is more productive, it's just not, have a cup of tea, but more than that, I think it will really, really matter. Yeah. And it can really help. I'm sure from all the professors I meet in these two places, both IIIT and IIT Guwahati, they are willing. Okay, but the pressures in these institutes are very different, right? They want to publish papers and get PhDs, whatever, right? So the rest of the community who wants to leverage that should engage. Maybe somebody can give them problems to work on, right? Independent problems, that I have a startup, I can't solve this problem, can you put your students on internship, right? I'm sure when those students come and intern with some local company, they'll understand what's happening here. They don't need to go to Bangalore to go do internship. They can jolly well do it here.
But isn't also where a policy change should come in as far as governing these institutes is concerned?
Official policy probably difficult, but also agreeing and sort of not agreeing to what Achintata said is that there are a lot of individuals in these institutions who are willing to help. The institute level welcomingness of somebody off the street is not there. You cannot get into the IIT and speak to someone today. You cannot be an entrepreneur from a village inside a Mongoldo. And
all IITs,
all IITs,
all
yes.
elitist organizations have that problem.
That's the word. They're still elitist, and unless you know someone there, it becomes difficult to access even the testing facilities, which on the other side are also very expensive. I mean, if you want a simple test with a certificate, there's nothing below 10,000 rupees. If you want multiple tests, you're spending lakhs. So those are at par with international rates. Probably that can be considered, because they're not, equipment is already there. Many of them are funded under DSC projects, under international projects. So you need not charge the local entrepreneur 10,000 rupees for every test. So if anyone there is listening, probably they can take a look.
Absolutely. On this note, we'll take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. Lots more coming on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching Beyond the Bytes. We're discussing the entrepreneurial landscape in Northeast. Is it heading towards the right direction? Now, before going to the break, we just discussed how the academia-industry relationship is not probably at the right place in the region and probably across the country. Now, see, the role of academia, where does it come? We need a think tank. Somebody might be ready to venture, be adventurous enough to go for a startup. But how do you identify where to invest, what to do, how to go for it? We need a fixed think tank for it. Who provides that? Who provides that? Who provides the think tank that will guide our budding entrepreneurs in the region? And there's a need for it. There's a major need for it.
I think, as you have correctly said about the academia interface, we have the industry association, local industry associations. Start very small. The local industry associations have their needs. Even if that little bit of research or that little bit of interaction is done, the industry association, the industrialists from here, they themselves can be the mentors. Instead of having teachers and mentors, teachers can be facilitators. People like us can be facilitators, but actual mentors could be even connecting to network. If you look at various startup ecosystems which have developed, rest of India, Bangalore, which is supposed to be, how does it happen? It's basically networking. So they have those co-working spaces. We hardly have a co-working space here. We don't have a proper incubation running here, right? So that itself will ignite a lot of ideas. And the fact that, even small businesses, what is the trend which is happening? Small businesses, large businesses, they're looking at solutions. And these solutions often come from startups. Now nothing else is required except for the connect. So that connect itself can facilitate
that's
the
where perhaps
ecosystem.
The startup Assam comes
basically,
in.
on this problem, we have been trying to visit all the engineering colleges and some of the colleges as well. And we find that they do not have a proper mentor in terms of if they have an idea, they cannot take it to the next level because it is either crunched at the fund level or it doesn't go to market. So if it has to go to market, someone from the industry has to connect them and take it to the market. So that bridge is what we are trying to build. So from startup, it's called Startup Campus. So we're sending few of our people there so that they can connect to the students, ask them to dream bigger, and then try to create an idea so that they could connect to the investor or a mentor from the industry.
In fact, Pankaj is doing what probably many of these academic institutions should do.
Yes,
is that he's actually introducing. Last week, my co-founder Anambil was there in the engineering college speaking to students. What the academia should do is stop professors from taking any sort of entrepreneurship classes.
Absolutely,
it's a sweeping statement, but most of these professors have only done entrepreneurship on thesis, on paper publications and presentations. Even a failed shopkeeper will be able to take a class every alternate day. Don't benchmark it with a failed shopkeeper.
That's a very strong statement.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, what you will learn from the shopkeeper is how to deal with a sales tax inspector, how to deal with the police, how to deal with logistics, with excise, with taxes. What ideally these classes should be are slightly non-structured. You're from academics, you can help on this. And make successful businessmen. You can't find entrepreneurs to take every class every week. Get successful businessmen.
Would you like to respond to that?
Absolutely, I totally second him. That's why I started by saying that people like us should not be mentors. We could, build up their confidence, but not business mentors in terms of how the business should go. Because academics have, and I'm more disturbed by the, I really feel disturbed when you have entrepreneurship courses in different colleges and universities. I got very excited once when I was in a particular college in Guwahati University. They asked me to take a paper. I said, okay, entrepreneurship paper, but it's all theory. It's like any other paper that you teach, and I stopped teaching because it's not a subject which you learn and then write in your exams and get 100 or 90 marks in that. So that concept, should actually
isn't
change.
this alarming? Isn't this alarming?
Yeah. So it is, but people will continue to do that in their own course unless we find a better alternative, right? So one of the things I have seen,
and we are nowhere near to finding an alternative.
I'll give a simple alternative. Okay,
yeah.
I'm not giving a prescription, but I've seen it working elsewhere, right? I've seen in places. I'll give an example. In Oxford, I've seen in London and many other places. What they do is just have informal gathering on a Saturday afternoon. People, whoever want to come, you could be an investor, you could be a entrepreneur, you could be just an ideator, or you may be just somebody who paints and dances, or whoever just want to hang around with good sort of people. You can just come there, okay, pay for your own coffee and just talk to people, okay? And everybody talks to everybody, and nobody is, shy. The whole purpose that you've come together is, you come with a purpose, right? And the purpose is, it's networking with a purpose. And you say that, hey, I have this idea, what do you think? Then another person says, hey, no, I know another friend who does this, go and meet this guy, right? And then you exchange business cards, you do things, you maybe go to a side room and talk about, in more detail. There's a certain structure to it that, confidentiality is kept, okay? There's no stealing of ideas and all that. Somebody has to, but it's just one person, okay, who I happen to meet. He used to just tell us, you come, okay, just like that, and you go there, and it's very addictive, because if you have even if nothing else, you just listen to people,
exactly,
and you get some other idea which you didn't start off with. So I believe that in a place like Guwahati, we don't need to wait for governments and all kinds of stuff.
Correct.
And a few of us, okay, but I would have done it if I was here, but I don't stay here. But if I come often, but I'm thinking that something like that can be done very easily, and where we just meet in one coffee shop or in somebody's house, and just talk. I think networking is essentially sharing ideas.
With ma'am, a discussion we had a couple of weeks ago at the pre-incubation stage. What is required is now you have all the meets are structured as competitions. So nobody talks to the guy sitting with him outside the presentation hall. End of the day, it's a competition. One guy gets a prize and he goes home. Nobody talks to the other guy. Nobody discusses ideas. Peer valued or validation by peers is very important. Even you might have a new cupcake recipe, have 15 people taste it and give you feedback. That's good evening's work, but that will not happen. You'll actually go and tell them how unique your cupcake is on a presentation slide.
So where I just wanted to extend that idea, this is where you could have professors, people from academia also attend, because there they will learn the real life, as you said, those kind of things, and they can say, hey, I can teach you accounting rules, but I don't seem to know this, right? So all the gaps that we find in each other's understanding can quickly get close, and in a much informal.
And this is something,
very good.
Yeah, this is something, in a small way we actually started with women entrepreneurs. We had a conclave where a lot of women came. The enthusiasm was so high that, just mooted an idea. Why don't you, on a regular basis, on a quarterly basis, first it was said one per every month. Then they said, okay, quarterly we'll meet. Everyone takes a venue. We had the first meeting. All these women, they just pay for whatever the charges for the venue. It's like an informal discussion. So which, it has become a little structured, and they're so happy about, because someone is doing good business in food, and she says, I need so many home bakers who can supply me. So automatically your, that thing starts happening.
So now Arindam and Pankaj, despite all the talks about, the ease of doing business and things getting better and a lot of people taking to entrepreneurship, when you started, both of you started, it was all by yourself, I'm sure. Even the minutest of research, there was no hand-holding around. How difficult it was, and do you think 5 years later, the situation has changed a bit, or it still remains the same despite all the talks of change?
So I'll not say it was...
See, investors might come to you now because you are set, you are running a startup which is doing well. So that's okay. But another Arindam Hazarika trying to do the same today, so how easy or difficult is it?
Arindam Hazarika, because if he wants to do the same thing, it will be difficult. Why I say in terms of help, we had very good help from the ICR Research Center here, NRC on PIC. So they were very supportive in terms of technologies and trainings. Apart from it, unfortunately, the state mechanism remains the same. The heads are turning. They're all becoming more aware. 5 years ago, when you went to someone and you talked about startups and valuations and VCs, even bankers did not understand. The IT guys still don't understand. You raise funds on a increased valuation in the Northeast. The IT guy thinks you've taken it from some place in Fancy Bazaar. He doesn't understand why would somebody fund in you. They will be after your lives. The other thing that's still missing is that although there are now legislations which say that in most cases which is not of critical nature, I mean medical equipment or defense equipment, you should source a certain amount from SMEs, MSMEs and startups. You don't or are not allowed to ask for earnest money deposits from these startups. You're not allowed to ask for past performance records. But most of the state offices or the institutions still don't adhere to those norms. They are out with requests, RFPs, tenders, when none of these are agreed to. And end of the day, what you have is service providers from outside of Northeast, fulfilling of all the roles. But if you are stuck with clauses of past performance and you need to do 10 crores business in last 2 years, then you'll never have a startup from this place doing it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what is the solution?
In our case, basically, if there would be another Arindam Hazarika, so it would be a little lesser tough. The problem would be not that.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think so?
Because since we have been facing the same problem after so many startups, and the co-founders of Startup Assam also have their own startups. But at the same time, we have understood that now a new person who's coming to this startup can get access to the Startup Assam Facebook page, where we share and communicate to the people.
So that is all good. That is all good.
From an entrepreneur perspective, the loneliness part is the most difficult part.
Yes.
So once that part is resolved, that you have a friend whom you can share something, and then share your thoughts, and then say that, okay, you're right, you're wrong. So that
again that goes back to networking. But again, everything boils down to funding, venture funding. It is still that difficult?
Yes.
It is.
It is still difficult.
You won't call it everything to venture funding, because venture funding is still very rare. It's 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million that goes through. But in terms of access to funds, there are many more options available as of today. You've got your credit guarantee scheme is much up now, so you can, if you have a viable business plan which you're able to convince the banker, which are two difficult things, then without actually having collateral, you can take a loan up to 2 crores, I think now. So that's huge. When we started off, it was 50 lakhs, and even then they were not willing, because people didn't know about CGTSME at that point of time, and they said, it's there, scheme is there, but not necessary that we give it to you. So even being a banker for 7 years, we didn't have any financial support from any of the institutions here. The first funds that came in were a VC from Mumbai. It was difficult. But in terms of schemes, in terms of Sarothi, in terms of many other schemes, the options are much higher. Now you've got to be smart enough to structure your business in a way that you can take advantage of one of them.
And are the norms kind enough now? The criteria that we are talking about, relaxation criteria, that is so crucial for startups.
I'll give you an example. I'll not take names. There's a Sarothi scheme, I think it's for 10 lakh rupees. So I was speaking to one of the bank managers of one of the cooperative banks. They said, do you get a lot of applications? He said, yes, we get a lot of applications, but CIBIL is not there in many cases, so we reject it. Now for a first-time entrepreneur, he's not going to have a glowing CIBIL report. So if you have a scheme for funding entrepreneurs, but you don't consider that he will have a relaxed CIBIL criteria, then again the scheme is doomed to fail.
Yeah, I mean, recently the NIDS has come out, right? And so I went through the whole gadget, and it seems to be quite encouraging for Northeast, right? But I think it's the devil is in the details. It's just a gadget announcement. We need to figure out, what does it, they talk about GST exemptions, the usual stuff. But I think we should also not kind of forget a point that Pankaj brought out earlier in terms of having spaces, right? If you are, going to enable people, you have to give them certain comfort of doing business. Okay, both in terms of as an environment, in terms of predictability of lifestyle or whatever, plus actual space, bandwidth, employment guarantee of certain kind of stuff, working space. Because for a startup, working capital is the key thing. He doesn't want to spend even 1 rupee, or he or she, and again, we have to be a little more imaginative in these kind of things. When you start an incubator space, it can't be far away in North Guwahati or somewhere else, because if somebody has to take an auto or bus or whatever every day and spend hours going there and coming, he won't do that. Okay, it has to be in the middle of the city. It has to be accessible. It has to be, you should think from the entrepreneur perspective, not from the government. I have space here, so I made an incubator space. That's of no use. You should find out where would incubators actually, where the incubator would make sense. So like that, you have to think from that perspective and build all these kind of spaces. And I'm sure if you give on a low lease, or if you give it cheap out, there'll be some people, as he said, 90% will fail. You should be okay with that. 5% will succeed, but those 5% will propel the whole engine, and then it'll get into a much more virtuous cycle. So we should think about these kind of small things which will help.
No. I think the most important, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the most important thing is, you have the incubation support. Even the pre-incubation support is extremely important for a region like Northeast, and some sort of, ideation fund because as we were always discussing, initially it's very difficult to even have whoever we call it, VCs, you call it bankers, they would always like to have some sort of a proof of concept. So to have a proof of concept, you need some amount of leeway to work on your idea, do a market research. So an ideation grant fund for enthusing and bringing more people is extremely important. That's what I feel. And I would reiterate that what sort of ideas, because here we have the tendency of seeing one success story and getting into it. For example, today if we look at the agri sector as one of the promising sectors, you find so many people, everyone is talking about black rice, organic farming. I mean, do we have space for so much of black rice growing? Huh?
Absolutely.
And you look at the service sector, you have taxi aggregators, you have these bikes, on hire. So everyone, startup means only those, or the e-commerce, everyone trying to sell handloom, handicraft. So there also, that ideation and having a proof of concept, validating what your idea is. I think these are support which is extremely important at this point.
In the ecosystem, we basically require a seed fund, corpus fund, so that can help a few of the first-time entrepreneurs. Like they start off, they need 5 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees. So that angel fund or a seed fund, if it's there, that can help a lot. That has helped in many of the metro cities that way, and some of the communities, they do help this same seed fund. We can also create such seed fund for the state, and then state and the other states as well.
Now if
I have a little difference of opinion on this, that angel fund or seed fund need not be Guwahati based, or need not be Assam based. All you need is access. Right? So I think that is what we should look at. Because you may not have so many high net worth individuals here. You may not have that kind of venture funding ecosystem here. But as long as our entrepreneurs here know how to reach them, and know, as you said, in terms of what kind of business plan that you need to put in place, so that is more acceptable and that is more comprehensible by those kind of forums, I think that's what we should train people for. Because you can't have a banking system built up even before you have built up the entrepreneurial system. I think we have to go out as much. Things are now, everybody's on, the world is flat. You can reach out to somebody in New York as well.
For a bigger scale, we can definitely move to
Yes, I would. We're running out of time. Arindam, last words from you. Today, if I am a budding entrepreneur today, what are the major challenges that I face? Very quickly.
The first thing is never lose heart. So you will have a lot of challenges. Challenges for every sector will be different. If it's IT, it will be different.
Technical
if it's food,
challenges, logistical challenges.
Logistical is one. When everyone talks about black rice, turmeric, ginger, that is available. Pineapple, it's available. What is not available, despite multiple national cold chain summits, is a working cold chain from Guwahati to the metros. So we, per se, our company, we spend 70 rupees a kg shifting products by flight from here to Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta. So when we talk about agri-produce from the northeast to rest of India, we've spoken about this at the highest levels. We've also tried to do this with the railways. There is probably a solution which is required, which will be shared across all entrepreneurs, a roll-on, roll-off system with the railways, where you can have something, even for small volumes, 200, 300 kgs, you put it on a temperature-controlled railway car and get it unloaded in Calcutta. From there, you have a network pan-India.
So would you like to share for the budding entrepreneurs, what are the sectors they should ideally target in the region? Viable sectors.
Yeah, again, I don't want to kind of bias with saying that these are the things that need to be done in this region. Of course, the government of Assam and all the others have kind of identified a few areas, right, which makes the region more inviting, because like as in agri or in food processing or healthcare or tourism, those kind of things, I agree. I mean, there's opportunities exist, which are, I would say, there are differentiating factors. Which differentiates Assam from other places. Like, you can't have this kind of tourism in many parts of India, right? But as an entrepreneur, we don't need to be limited by that. We can think the world is flat. We can think of a solution which can be prototyped here. You think that, because that has to be done, right? You can't understand the European market, and we can't go and think of selling things in Europe just by experimenting in Panbazar, right? So you have to have a certain amount of prototyping, but having said that, you can come up with solutions which are not just confined by the limits of the region.
We are running out of last words, your advice to budding entrepreneurs, very quickly.
There's no other option but hard work, and be thorough about whatever they want to do. because half-baked knowledge you can never do an enterprise. So I think that research is extremely important on what you want, is extremely important on the...
Never say die. Pankaj, last words from you.
Never say die. That's the
Well, that's it. Never say die. There are a lot of challenges, but one thing is sure, things are getting better for entrepreneurs in the region. On this note, we'll take your leave today. Do join us same time next week. Till then, stay safe, stay well.